What if one of the greatest mysteries of the human brain was already described thousands of years ago? Not in a neuroscience laboratory, not in a modern research paper, but in the spiritual traditions of ancient India. What if a symbol that many people today dismiss as mythology was actually an attempt by ancient thinkers to explain a profound truth about human consciousness? A truth hidden deep inside the human brain. A tiny structure, no larger than a grain of rice. The pineal gland. Modern science discovered it centuries ago. But long before microscopes existed, long before neuroscience became a field of study, ancient Indian philosophy described something remarkably similar. They called it the third eye, and they associated it with a figure who has fascinated humanity for thousands of years. A being known as Shiva, often called Mahadev, the great consciousness. In ancient depictions, Shiva is shown with three eyes. Two ordinary eyes that see the physical world, and a third eye placed at the center of the forehead. According to the ancient texts, this eye does not see objects. It sees truth. It sees beyond illusion. And when it opens, ignorance disappears. For centuries, people in the modern world treated these stories as mythology, symbolic narratives, spiritual poetry. But something interesting has been happening over the last 100 years. As neuroscience advances, as scientists study meditation, as researchers explore consciousness, the symbolism behind the third eye is beginning to look less like fantasy and more like a profound observation about the human mind. The hidden organ in the center of the brain. Deep inside the human brain lies a tiny gland shaped like a pine cone. This is why scientists call it the pineal gland. It sits almost exactly at the center of the brain, between the two hemispheres, right where many ancient traditions symbolically place the third eye. For a long time, scientists believed this gland had only one job: regulating sleep. When darkness falls, the pineal gland releases a hormone called melatonin. Melatonin tells the body it is time to rest. When sunlight appears in the morning, melatonin levels drop, and the brain prepares to wake up. In simple terms, the pineal gland helps control your biological clock. But as research continued, scientists discovered something far more intriguing. The pineal gland is extremely sensitive to light. Even though it does not receive light directly like the eyes, it responds to signals carried through the nervous system. Your brain constantly monitors the rhythm of day and night, sunrise, sunset, the slow rotation of the earth. Your biology is synchronized with the cosmos in ways most people never realize. But the mysteries of the pineal gland do not end there, because scientists discovered something unusual inside it. Tiny microscopic crystals. These crystals possess a property known as piezoelectricity, which means they can convert physical vibrations into electrical signals. Pause for a moment and think about that. Inside your brain exists a structure containing crystals capable of transforming vibration into electricity. Your nervous system communicates through electrical impulses. This discovery raised a fascinating question. Could the brain be sensitive to subtle environmental signals we do not yet fully understand? Some scientists believe the pineal gland may play a role in regulating consciousness itself. And this is where modern science begins to approach ideas that ancient traditions explored thousands of years ago. The philosophy of Shiva. To understand why the third eye is associated with Shiva, we must understand what Shiva represents. In the philosophical traditions of India, Shiva is not simply a god in the ordinary sense. Shiva represents pure awareness, the silent consciousness behind the mind, the observer behind all thoughts. When ancient yogis spoke about the third eye of Shiva, they were describing the awakening of higher perception, the ability to see reality beyond mental illusions. In Hindu philosophy, the world we perceive is often described as Maya. Maya does not mean the world is fake. It means our perception of reality is limited. Our senses only detect a small portion of what actually exists. Modern science agrees with this idea. The human eye can only see a narrow band of the electromagnetic spectrum, visible light, but beyond that lies an enormous range of invisible frequencies: infrared radiation, ultraviolet light, radio waves, X-rays, gamma rays. These energies pass through your body constantly, yet you cannot see them. Your perception of reality is only a tiny slice of the full picture. Ancient philosophers described this limitation as Maya, the illusion created by the mind. The awakening of the third eye represents the ability to see beyond these limitations, not with physical sight, but with deeper awareness. The yogic map of consciousness. Thousands of years before neuroscience, yogic traditions developed a map of the human mind. They described energy centers called chakras. One of the most important is the Ajna Chakra, located between the eyebrows, exactly where the third eye is symbolically placed. The word Ajna means command, the command center of awareness. Ancient yogis believed that when this center becomes active, perception changes. The mind becomes clearer, more focused, more aware of subtle patterns in reality. Modern neuroscience has discovered something fascinating. Meditation, the practice used by yogis for thousands of years, actually changes brain structure. Brain imaging studies show that long-term meditation strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for focus and decision-making. It also reduces activity in the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for fear and stress. In simple terms, meditation literally trains the brain to become calmer and more aware. This is remarkably similar to what ancient yogis described when they spoke about awakening the third eye. The fire of Shiva. In ancient stories, the third eye of Shiva contains fire. When it opens, this fire destroys ignorance. At first glance, this sounds purely symbolic. But neuroscience has discovered something interesting. During moments of sudden insight, the brain produces bursts of extremely high-frequency brain waves called gamma waves. These waves represent intense synchronization between different regions of the brain. They occur during moments of deep realization. The instant when a difficult problem suddenly becomes clear. The moment when understanding appears out of nowhere. Scientists sometimes refer to this as the aha moment. Ancient traditions describe something very similar. The sudden illumination of awareness. The fire of insight. The burning away of confusion. The opening of the third eye. Two completely different cultures. Two completely different languages. Yet they appear to be describing the same human experience. A meeting of two worlds. For centuries, science and spirituality developed separately. Science focused on the external universe. Spiritual traditions explored the internal universe of consciousness. But today, these two worlds are beginning to meet. Neuroscientists are studying meditation. Psychologists are studying mindfulness. Physicists are exploring the nature of consciousness. And slowly, many researchers are realizing that ancient traditions may have discovered important truths about the human mind, not through technology, but through disciplined observation of awareness itself. The symbolism of Shiva's third eye may be one of the most powerful examples of this ancient insight, because it represents something universal, the awakening of human consciousness. The true meaning of the third eye. The third eye is not about supernatural powers. It is about perception, clarity, awareness, the ability to observe your thoughts rather than being controlled by them. When this awareness grows stronger, life begins to feel different. Decisions become clearer. Emotions become easier to understand. Creativity becomes easier to access. The mind becomes less reactive, more intelligent, more conscious. In this sense, the third eye of Shiva represents the highest potential of the human mind. The potential to awaken awareness. The potential to see reality more clearly. Close your eyes for a moment. Notice the thoughts moving through your mind. Notice the quiet awareness observing them. That silent observer has always been there. Watching, learning, understanding. Ancient yogis called this awareness the eye of Shiva. Modern science calls it consciousness. Different words, same mystery. And perhaps the most fascinating realization is this. The third eye was never meant to be believed blindly. It was meant to be discovered inside your own mind. The awakening of inner vision. There is something curious about human perception. Most people believe they see the world exactly as it is. But neuroscience tells us something very different. The brain does not simply observe reality, it constructs it. Every second, your senses receive enormous amounts of information. Light enters your eyes. Sound vibrations reach your ears. Chemical signals activate your sense of smell and taste. But the brain cannot process all of it. So it filters. It selects. It simplifies. And from that limited information, it creates the experience we call reality. In other words, what you see is not the complete universe. It is a compressed version of it. Ancient Indian philosophy described this limitation using a powerful word. Maya. Maya is often translated as illusion. But that translation is slightly misleading. The world itself is not false. What is limited is our perception of it. We do not see the universe as it truly is. We see only a small fragment that our senses allow. Modern science agrees with this idea more than many people realize. The human eye can detect only a tiny portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, visible light, but beyond that lies an entire ocean of invisible energy. Infrared radiation, ultraviolet light, radio waves, X-rays, gamma rays. These energies pass through your body every moment of your life, yet you cannot see them. So the universe you experience is only a small slice of a much larger reality. Ancient yogis understood this limitation, and they believed that through training the mind, perception could become deeper, clearer, more aware. This deeper perception is what they symbolized as the third eye, the science of attention. If there is one ability that defines human consciousness, it is attention. Attention determines what enters your awareness, what you notice, what you ignore. In neuroscience, attention is often compared to a spotlight. Imagine standing in a dark room, holding a flashlight. Wherever the beam points, you can see clearly. Everything outside the beam remains hidden. Your brain works in a similar way. Attention highlights certain information while ignoring everything else. But here is the interesting part. You can train attention. Meditation, a practice that originated in ancient India thousands of years ago, is essentially the training of attention. When people meditate regularly, scientists observe measurable changes in brain function. Areas of the brain associated with focus become stronger. Areas associated with stress become calmer. And the brain becomes better at observing thoughts without immediately reacting to them. This ability is sometimes called meta-awareness, the awareness of your own thoughts. Ancient yogis described this state as the awakening of the third eye, not because a literal eye appears, but because awareness becomes sharper. You begin to see your own mental patterns more clearly, your fears, your habits, your reactions, and once you see them clearly, something powerful happens. You are no longer controlled by them. The symbolism of Shiva's third eye. The ancient stories about Shiva contain deep psychological symbolism. One of the most famous stories describes the moment when Shiva opens his third eye. When it opens, a powerful fire emerges. This fire destroys illusion. It burns away ignorance. At first glance, this might sound like mythology, but consider what happens during a moment of sudden realization. You suddenly understand something you could not see before. A mistake becomes obvious. A truth becomes clear. An insight appears instantly. It feels almost like a flash of light in the mind. Neuroscience has discovered that during moments of deep insight, the brain produces powerful bursts of gamma brain waves. These waves represent intense communication between different regions of the brain. In those moments, information that was previously scattered becomes suddenly integrated. The result is clarity. The aha moment. Ancient traditions symbolized this sudden illumination as the fire of Shiva's third eye. Again, two completely different languages describing the same human experience. The pineal gland and consciousness. The pineal gland remains one of the most mysterious structures in the brain. Although scientists understand its role in regulating sleep, many questions remain. The pineal gland is located almost exactly at the center of the brain. Some philosophers have even suggested it may play a role in integrating sensory information. The famous French philosopher René Descartes once called the pineal gland the seat of the soul. Today, scientists would not phrase it that way. But the idea that certain parts of the brain play a central role in consciousness remains a major area of research. What is fascinating is that ancient yogic traditions placed the Ajna Chakra, the third eye center, in almost the same location. This does not necessarily mean ancient sages understood brain anatomy in the modern sense. But it does suggest that through introspection and meditation they discovered an important center of mental awareness. The practice of awakening awareness. Ancient yogis believed that awakening the third eye required discipline. Not belief, not rituals alone, but practice, meditation, breath control, self-observation. These practices were designed to calm the mind. Because when the mind becomes quiet, awareness becomes clearer. Modern psychology confirms something very similar. When the brain is constantly distracted, thinking becomes fragmented. Focus weakens. Decision-making becomes reactive. But when the mind is calm and focused, creativity increases. emotional balance improves, and perception becomes sharper. In many ways, meditation is like training a muscle, the muscle of attention, and as attention strengthens, awareness expands. This gradual expansion of awareness is what ancient traditions symbolized as the awakening of the third eye, a bridge between East and West. For centuries, Western science and Eastern spirituality developed separately. Science studied the external universe. Spiritual traditions studied the internal universe of consciousness. But today, these two paths are beginning to converge. Researchers are studying meditation in laboratories. Psychologists are exploring the effects of mindfulness on mental health. Neuroscientists are mapping how attention shapes brain function. And as this research continues, one realization becomes increasingly clear. Ancient traditions may have discovered profound insights about the human mind long before modern science had the tools to explain them. Not because they had advanced technology, but because they spent centuries studying the most complex system in existence, the human mind. The silent observer. If you close your eyes right now, something interesting happens. Thoughts appear, memories, plans, worries, ideas, but there is something else present. An observer, a silent awareness watching those thoughts. That observer is always there, even when your mind is busy, even when emotions are strong. Ancient yogis believed that connecting with this observer was the key to awakening higher awareness. The third eye was not about gaining supernatural powers. It was about recognizing the silent consciousness behind the mind. And when that recognition deepens, life begins to feel different. Not because the world has changed, but because your relationship with your thoughts has changed. You are no longer trapped inside them. You can observe them, understand them, and choose how to respond. This simple shift is the beginning of inner freedom. Take a moment. Breathe slowly. Notice the awareness behind your thoughts. That awareness is quiet, calm, unchanging. Ancient India called this awareness the eye of Shiva. Modern science calls it consciousness. Different cultures, different languages, but perhaps pointing to the same mysterious truth, that the most powerful instrument in the universe may not be a machine. It may be the awakened human mind. There is a moment that almost every human being experiences at least once in life. A moment of sudden clarity. A moment when confusion disappears and understanding arrives instantly. You may have struggled with a problem for days, maybe even weeks, and then suddenly the answer appears. Not slowly, not step by step, but all at once, like a flash of light inside the mind. Psychologists call this moment insight. Scientists study it using brain imaging technology. And what they have discovered is fascinating. During moments of insight, the brain produces a sudden burst of high-frequency activity known as gamma waves. These waves represent a moment when different regions of the brain begin communicating with extraordinary efficiency. Information that was scattered suddenly becomes connected. And the result is a powerful sense of realization. To the person experiencing it, the moment feels almost magical, as if a hidden light suddenly switched on inside the mind. Ancient Indian traditions described something very similar, but they used a different language. They called it the opening of the third eye. And they associated this awakening with one of the most mysterious figures in world philosophy, Shiva, the fire of awareness. In many ancient stories, when Shiva opens his third eye, a powerful flame emerges. This flame destroys illusion. It burns away ignorance and reveals truth. At first glance, this may sound like pure mythology, but symbols often carry deeper meanings. When we examine this symbolism psychologically, something interesting appears. Ignorance in these stories does not mean lack of information. It means misunderstanding reality, seeing things incorrectly, believing illusions created by the mind. And what does awareness do when it becomes stronger? It removes confusion. It reveals truth. In that sense, awareness itself behaves like fire. It burns away misunderstanding. It illuminates what was hidden. This is why many spiritual traditions across the world describe enlightenment using the metaphor of light. The light of understanding, the illumination of consciousness, the awakening of perception. Ancient India expressed this idea through the symbolism of Shiva's third eye, the energy of awareness. Ancient yogic traditions also described something called Kundalini. Kundalini was believed to be a form of dormant energy within the human body, not physical energy in the ordinary sense, but a metaphor for human potential. According to yogic teachings, this energy moves upward through the spine and activates different centers of awareness. The highest of these centers is the Ajna Chakra, the third eye. When this center becomes active, perception changes. The mind becomes calm, focused, deeply aware. Many modern researchers studying meditation have observed similar effects. Long-term meditation practitioners often display unusual patterns of brain activity. Their brains show stronger synchronization between different regions. Their attention is more stable. Their emotional responses are more balanced. In other words, their brains operate in a more integrated way. What ancient traditions described as the awakening of energy may simply represent the brain reaching a more coherent and balanced state of functioning. Different language, same underlying human experience. The discipline of attention. One of the most important lessons in yogic philosophy is the discipline of attention. Attention is the gateway to awareness. Wherever attention goes, the mind follows. Modern technology constantly competes for our attention. Notifications, advertisements, endless streams of information. The human mind is rarely given time to rest. But ancient traditions understood something important. A scattered mind cannot see clearly. Clarity requires stillness, focus, observation. Meditation was designed to cultivate these qualities, not to escape reality, but to observe it more deeply. When attention becomes steady, the mind becomes quieter. And when the mind becomes quiet, perception becomes sharper. You begin to notice patterns in your thoughts, patterns in your emotions, patterns in your behavior. And with that awareness comes the ability to change. The observer behind the mind. Perhaps the most profound discovery made by ancient yogis was the realization that the mind is not the same as awareness. Thoughts appear and disappear constantly. Emotions rise and fall. Memories come and go. But something remains constant. The observer. The silent awareness that watches all these experiences. Modern neuroscience still struggles to fully explain this phenomenon. We can measure brain activity. We can observe neural networks. But the experience of being aware remains one of the greatest mysteries in science. Philosophers call this the hard problem of consciousness. How does physical matter produce subjective experience? How do electrical signals in the brain create the feeling of being alive? Ancient Indian philosophy approached this mystery from a different direction. Instead of asking how consciousness emerges from matter, it asked whether consciousness might be the fundamental reality itself. In this view, awareness is not produced by the brain. The brain is simply an instrument through which awareness experiences the world. This idea remains controversial in science, but it is increasingly discussed in modern philosophy of mind. A civilization built on consciousness. One of the most fascinating aspects of ancient Indian culture is how deeply it explored the nature of consciousness. Many ancient civilizations studied astronomy, mathematics, architecture. India certainly did these things as well. But Indian philosophy placed extraordinary emphasis on understanding the mind. Meditation, self-inquiry, observation of awareness. Texts such as the Upanishads explored questions about consciousness thousands of years ago. These writings asked profound questions. Who am I? What is the nature of the self? What lies beyond the thinking mind? These questions remain central to modern philosophy and neuroscience. In many ways, ancient Indian thinkers were exploring the same mysteries that scientists study today. They simply used different methods. Instead of microscopes and computers, they used attention and introspection. The meeting of science and spirituality. Today, something remarkable is happening. Science is beginning to study meditation seriously. Neuroscientists are measuring brain activity during deep states of awareness. Psychologists are studying the effects of mindfulness on mental health. Physicists are exploring the possibility that consciousness may play a fundamental role in the universe. Slowly, the gap between science and spirituality is narrowing. And as this happens, ancient ideas that once seemed mystical are being examined in a new light. The symbolism of Shiva's third eye may be one of those ideas, not as a literal eye, but as a powerful representation of awakened awareness. The real meaning of the third eye? The third eye is not about supernatural abilities. It is about perception, clarity, understanding. It represents the ability to observe your thoughts without being controlled by them. the ability to recognize illusions created by the mind, the ability to see reality more deeply. In that sense, the third eye is not something possessed only by a deity. It represents a potential within every human being. The potential for awareness, the potential for wisdom, the potential to awaken the deeper intelligence of the mind. Take a moment. Close your eyes. Notice the thoughts moving through your mind. Notice the silent awareness observing them. That awareness is always present. Ancient India symbolized it through Shiva. Modern science studies it as consciousness. Different traditions, different languages, yet perhaps pointing toward the same profound truth, that the greatest mystery in the universe is not hidden in distant galaxies. It is hidden within the human mind. And the symbol of the third eye is a reminder that awareness itself may be the most powerful force we possess. The eye that sees truth, the eye that burns away illusion, the eye of Mahadev. Thanks for watching this video.